things I want you to do before you leave today is to check in your whips at the door. I want you to check in your whips at the door. The things that you flog yourself with every morning. The things that you hit yourself during the day. The things that you punish yourself with that the enemy comes and gives you every morning. Leave them at the door. You don't need them anymore. You notice the title, Relax, it's okay to be human and imperfect.
You have to speak up, some of us can't even hear you.
I can, but not very clearly.
No.
You may not have a recording today, but I can't help that. The batteries, I put new batteries in, but they don't seem any better than the old batteries. But anyway, it's okay to be human and imperfect.
Yes.
We all are, right? Human, I mean.
Yes.
Anybody who's not human, leave the room. Are you feeling overcome? Are you feeling tired, misunderstood, rejected, powerless? I'm sure we'll get a few hands for those. Or do you feel that you failed ever and yourself in some way? Now, in the past? Then accept the fact that these are just feelings. And not necessarily based on fact. But even if they were, you still need to press in, forgive yourself and others. And let him refresh and restore you as you submit those feelings to him. And let him immerse you in the reality of his promises. Let's face it, nobody gets it right all the time. There's nobody in this room that gets it right all the time. Torah is full of people who failed. Crammed full of people who were failures.
Even King David.
Even King David. Even his own people, the 12 that he had with him. They ran away. They betrayed him. They did all sorts of things. They failed. And yet, they let go of their failures, their mistakes, their plans and ambitions, and got on board with his. That's not the point. It's not about the fact that they failed. It's about the fact that eventually they came together and trusted and got it right, in spite of what they'd done in the past. One of the most poignant examples of that is where he turned around to him and 3 times he denied him. He said, he told him it would happen. And then 3 times when he came together with him again, he said, "Do you love me?" What he was really doing was saying, "I forgive you. I restore you." He took that failure and turned it into success and said, "In spite of all you've done, in spite of the fact that you denied me, I'm appointing you as a shepherd. I want you to look after my lambs, look after my sheep, look after my older sheep." Why? Because he knew the guy was human and understood human and would have empathy with all the people out there that had the same problems. Whereas before that, he was arrogant and he was right, he was perfect and everybody else was wrong. He brought him down to size. He broke his heart. And that's what it takes to reach a broken world. Broken people need somebody who's been broken to understand how they feel and where they've been. Through trust, grace, forgiveness and perseverance, they've achieved great things. Read some time of all the wonderful people that were brought to David in the cave when he failed at everything. And he was saying, "Thank you, Yahweh, for bringing me all the bankrupts and all the failures and all the rejects and the scum of the earth. Thank you." But these people that he brought to him became his mighty men. Read on. They became the mighty men. He transformed them. Especially when they were able to let go of their failures and stop living and dwelling in the past. Let him show you the bigger picture. Let him invigorate you and encourage you and love you unconditionally. No strings. Let him strengthen you with his joy as he restores and refreshes you. How do I know he does that? Because he's done it to me. There are many here this morning who he's done it to. This isn't theory. This is fact. Soar with him. Run with him. Walk on water with him. If somebody tells you you've gone overboard, take it as a compliment. Just don't look down. All of these things are your inheritance. His absolute promises to you in Torah. Because as his word says, he's not a man that he should lie. He doesn't know how. He only has the truth. His promises are for us, right here, right now, today. In the middle of the situation. Not just before the situation, which is what we all ask for, or even just after. He comes to us in the middle of the storm and calms it and helps us to get through it. When do we get through? When does he take us straight away to the other side? The minute we trust him in the middle of the situation. That's the key. He uses the impossible and the difficult. He doesn't cause them, but he uses them to shape our character. And our moment of breakthrough is when we refuse to stay down. You know those little things you used to see in birds' cages? Hemispherical. She knows this message very well. They were called, it was like a little plastic bird, but it had a big round thing on the bottom with a lead weight in it. And no matter how many times you knocked it down, it sprang back up again. No matter how many times you hit it, it couldn't stay down. It would just go boing, boing. The bird would peck at it, it would come back up and peck the bird. This is what we need to be. We need to be hemispherical believers.
Yes.
Every time he hits us, we come straight back up.
Yes. That's why we need one another, no? It is. Yeah.
Our moment of breakthrough is when we refuse to stay down and say, enough is enough, no more. And we get back up again. And when we do that, we let him pour his anointing all over us, stick us back on our donkey, and send us on our way healed. But to do that, you have to stand back up again. Getting knocked over isn't the problem, it's whether you get back up again or not. And he will encourage us to press in and move forward again, in spite of our feelings. We have to go against our feelings to do that. If we listen to our feelings, we'll stay in the mud. Because our feelings will say, I'm tired, I'm shattered, I've had enough, it's too much. Nobody's had to suffer what I've had to suffer. I've got news for you, he has. Far more than we've ever suffered, never will. It's called the TBT. The teabag test. Why? Because you only discover the strengths and weaknesses of a teabag when it's immersed in hot water. When it's under pressure. And both pieces of that information are necessary to allow Yahweh to help you make adjustments. You don't just need to know your strengths, you need to know your weaknesses as well. And then allow him to bring balance in both of those areas. To accept the fact that we're not going to get everything right and just go with our strengths. I still remember Joni, was it Tada?
Yeah.
One of her things was she said she used to dwell on her problem. She used to dwell on the fact that she was disabled. And eventually she got to the stage where she started to dwell on what she could do and not on what she couldn't do anymore. She doesn't even think about what she can't do anymore. She just focuses on what she can do.
She was in a wheelchair and couldn't move her arms or legs.
No, not at all. She had a diving accident.
Yeah, he was 17.
I've listened to her. She's one of the most positive people I know.
Yes.
In fact, she says, I've had more of a ministry in this wheelchair than I ever would have done before.
Is that saying where the guy goes, I saw a man complaining that he had no shoes until he saw a man with no feet.
Exactly. So when you're having the tea bag test, just allow him to brew it. It's the same way with gold. It's only when it reaches very, very high temperatures that all of the impurities rise to the surface. And what do they do when all the impurities rise to the surface? Skim them off. So when you're under pressure and you're under heat, let all the impurities flow to the surface and allow him to skim it off. And the more that can be skimmed off, the purer and the more transparent and valuable the gold becomes. Diamonds are just minerals. They've come under intense pressure, enormous pressure. They're just minerals formed by enormous pressures over time. And then this seemingly insignificant, worthless lump of coal, this worthless lump of dull stone, is recognised for what it really is by somebody who knows what to look for. If you just looked at it on the ground, it would just be a lump of stone. I still remember, I did an interview with a guy in South Africa that discovered the Koh-i-Noor diamond, one of the biggest diamonds ever. When he first got it, he took one look at it and said, no, it's too big, and threw it out the window. And it just sat on a heap out the back of his window with all the other stuff he used to toss. So no, it's worthless, useless. And it just sat there until somebody happened to spot it one day and bring it in and say, let's have a look at this. Somebody recognised it for what it was. Because it was examined by a master cutter. And a master cutter looks at it not based on its imperfections, but what he can make it, what it can become.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because the man who cut it, he had such a headache because it was so valuable if he did the wrong thing.
It's one of Yakov's relatives.
Really?
He was the cutter of the
Really?
diamond.
So it just makes me realize when you see somebody who really is a rough diamond,
We're just talking about one of your relatives that cut the diamond.
we have to think very carefully to get a headache before
There
we
would
try
have been a
to
lot of planning, a lot of drawing, before he went anywhere near it with a tool. And Yahweh does the same thing with us. He looks and he examines and he sees the strengths and the weaknesses and the flaws. And he gets a plan of action before he comes anywhere near.
And he never smothers.
Yeah.
Smothering wood.
be slow to charge.
And in particular, he plans a pattern of cuts that will not break the stone. Because if you tap in the wrong place, boom, you have tiny diamonds. And then gently and with great precision, he cuts and grinds and polishes a series of facets. That's why a diamond is cut the way it is. Because depending on the pattern and the way the facets are cut will depend on how much brilliance comes shining out of that diamond. And only a master craftsman knows how to do that, how to bring the most light, the most brilliance out of that stone.
Refraction.
And it fully reveals its unique characteristics and allows maximum light and brilliance to be seen. And Yahweh does that with us. So at times when you feel that you're under the grinder or if you're under the cutter, he's just polishing another facet. And once he's done it, more brilliance will come out, more light will come out. Our true character will start to shine to people around us. We can't see it. We're the stone. But other people can. When he shines his light on it, they'll go, oh, what is that? So stop dwelling on past disappointments and failures. Deal with them, move on. Let him help you deal with them. Because 9 times out of 10, you can't deal with it. He has to deal with it for you or bring other people alongside. But so stop dwelling on past disappointments and past regrets and failures. Right now, stop doing it. Because our plans and promises may fail from time to time, and often do. How many people's plans have failed? Never?
Epically.
Well, in which case, if they haven't, you haven't learned anything. That's where we learn. But his can and will. Our plans may fail, his won't. His plans can and will succeed, but only if we follow them 100%. His ways and methods are far higher than ours. If he has planted the seeds, we will see the fruit. That's a promise. Because if they're his seeds, we will see the olives, not the lemons. And just as the rain doesn't return to the sky without causing abundant life and growth, his word will absolutely accomplish everything contained within them through his eternal power. And if you know, you don't see it so much here, but certainly in Western countries and Europe and places like that, most of the growth takes place under a blanket of snow. You think, oh, it's just snow, everything's dead. No. That's the moisture that slowly releases, that actually encourages the growth, and then suddenly, boom, spring comes and everything comes up.
Yes.
They didn't start that way.
No.
They've been gradually growing and being nurtured under the snow, ready to come forth at the right time. So if you're going through winter and you feel like you've got snow on you, don't worry about it. Spring's going to come and boom, you'll blossom.
Yes.
His eternal power and divine nature that are all around us. Look around you. See what he can design. See what he does. Those invisible qualities that can be seen and understood by examining all that he's created. Irrefutable evidence that leads us to the unshakable conclusion that we can absolutely trust him. In all circumstances, not just some, we can trust him in every circumstance if we submit to him and we follow his plan 100%. Everything he says and does. But crucially, we must never let our constant nagging insecurities and doubts determine our actions. If we base our actions on our nagging doubts and our constant insecurities, it won't happen. Trust is not the absence of doubt, it's the conquest over it. That's one of the most important things you need to hear today. Trust is not the absence of doubt. We all doubt. It's the conquest over it. It's the trust.
Yes.
Trust conquers doubt. And you say, but I can't see it, I can't hear it. But I trust his word. He has said, this is what's going to happen. He has made this promise. Put your trust in his word, not my wants and thoughts. We can have the victory over it. It's like I've said before. When doubts and temptations come and sit on your head, that's not a sin. Just the fact that we get temptations isn't sinful. What's sinful is when we let them make a nest. The bird can come and land, but don't let it make a nest. Because his word says that no eye has seen, no ear has heard, and no heart has ever imagined all the things that Yahweh has prepared for those that love him. How many people here today know that Yahweh loves them? Yeah. In which case, you haven't even begun to see and hear and understand what he's prepared for you.
Yes.
Not my words, his. If only we could receive this wonderful promise in our spirit. But we doubt it and we say, oh, but we're not worthy. Oh, we're not worth it. Yeah, you're right, we're not. He doesn't do it because we're worthy or because we're worth it. He does it because that's his promise to us. If we got what we deserved, I'd be in big trouble. Never ever ask for what you deserve. It works both ways.
His grace. His mercy.
We need to receive this promise in our spirit and let it overcome the nagging doubts that attack our mind-based feelings. Why? Because our mind will analyse, dissect, worry and doubt anything and everything that's thrown at us. Right? It's just the nature of our minds. It's a defence mechanism. But if we've received it in the Spirit, it will overcome those things. It will conquer those feelings. They're mind-based feelings. Because our minds have been indoctrinated and trained to use Greek logic. That's what we're taught at school. All teaching is based on Greek logic. Yeah. Absolutely. And we're trained to use it to react rather than respond. And God says, don't react, respond. You know the scripture where it talks about turn the other cheek? It's not what it actually means. What it's saying is, respond with a soft cheek. Don't react with a hard cheek, but turn it and respond to the situation. So when it's saying turn the other cheek, it's saying don't react, respond. The actual translation says respond with the soft cheek. Don't react with a hard revenge cheek. This says, I'm going to get you. Just wait, I'll think of something. It's not fair. Of course it's not fair. It's not about fair. It reacts rather than responds because it only understands concrete earthly things, things it can see and feel. But logic is in itself a way out of its depth in spiritual matters. Matters that can only be discerned, received and shared by our spirit. That's why when we're not redeemed, we can't. Because if our spirit's not activated, then we can't receive these things, because these things are spiritual. And the mind can't receive spiritual things. Doesn't understand them, doesn't make sense. It's not logical. Which is why women in particular understand spiritual things better than men. Because they don't respond to logic, they respond emotionally, they respond prayerfully. And they can feel and understand the realms of the spirit. Whereas men want to analyse it, make it logical.
It was like when Moses was up with Yahweh, and he didn't sort of go into a philosophical argument. He just basically fell down on his face and started crying.
Yes.
And it was that what made God decide not to destroy his people.
Yes. How unmanly. It's the most manly thing you can do to show emotion. He created us to be emotional.
It shows that we're real.
Yeah. Tears have a healing quality. Joyfully or on the other. This is why when we're grieving, we weep. Because the weeping helps heal the grief. If we don't go through that process, we don't get healed. There are many people still locked in their grief because they've never allowed themselves to go through the grieving process. But it'll come out in other ways.
Jeffrey, you mentioned about the Greek logic, and then I've just come across an introduction, why it makes a difference to believe that God wrote the Bible on one principle. On principle, I would not give science the last word to treat, but because I don't think or faith should be regarded as category of knowledge inferior to science, the philosophical underpinnings of the Western world are centered on two cities, Athens and Jerusalem, the Greeks developed philosophy and the rational manner, but largely at the expense of separating heart and head. Many psychological and spiritual ills stem from the separation. One can speak of this separation between body and soul. The Jews keep the head and heart, body and soul together, but the Bible reflects the ternary view of the human nature. The head has its way of knowing, and the heart has its way of knowing. Neither should be ignored. If the head and heart are connected, there is a possibility that what the Bible claims seems to be moved the heart to respond in faith.
Absolutely. So why does the mind work that way? Because the mind only works on what it can see, touch and feel. People say, but I can't see it. Can you see the oxygen that keeps you alive?
No.
Can you feel it? Can you touch it? Everything has to be concrete and earth-based. If I can't see it and I can't touch it, it can't be real. Try saying that to gravity.
Or the seasons.
Whether you can see it or touch it or not, you step off a cliff, you're going to understand the principle of gravity very quickly. Everything else the mind sees as illogical and illusionary, and therefore it's rejected and dismissed based on the scientific logic approach, this Greek logic approach. The whole of Western education is based on Greek logic. Religion is based on Greek logic because it comes through the Greek-Roman way of doing things. And this is why they want to study everything, study the word, understand the word. I don't want to study and understand it as much as I want to actually do what it says. If we don't hear it and then carry it out in practice, it's a waste of time. We have to put it into action or it's a waste. It's good to understand it, but only if we put it into action. So it's based on a scientific approach, based on an arrogance that says, if I can't, don't, or won't understand something, it can't be real. That's their attitude. If I don't understand it, it can't be real. What arrogance! I once heard one of the world's greatest scientists turn around and say, and he was in his 80s, and he said, I've finally come to the realization that I'm starting to understand how much I don't know. He said, I've finally just got to the stage of understanding how little I actually know and how much I don't know. That to me is a humble man. So the best that they can do instead is to know about him. But they actually reject as nonsense the concept of any interaction with him and knowing him personally. Any psychiatrist will tell you it's okay to speak to God. But if you tell me that you heard from him, I'm going to lock you up. That's their attitude. It's okay to speak to him, but don't try and tell him any hearing problem, otherwise bang, you're in it. I've got a nice shirt for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
In Metadyahu it states, the spirit is eager, but human nature, the mind, the will and the emotions are weak, as we all know. And in Yochanan we read, spirit is spirit and flesh is flesh. It's oil and water. They are incompatible. They sit very uneasily alongside each other, but they are completely incompatible with each other. It is the renewed, restored spirit when we redeem that has to replace and reverse the process of the flesh being dominant in our lives. It has to get us away from basing our life based on feelings, basing our life based on fear. And it has to allow us to become obedient to the Spirit. And what we have is a civil war within our own body.
Yeah.
or even a war of independence in the case of some of us. We want independence from him. Like this little place down in Christchurch, in Brighton, New Brighton or something. They want to declare themselves a separate country.
Ridiculous.
Let them have it.
So many of us at times want to declare ourselves a separate country.
Yes.
Yes. They've been on an economic downturn. They've decided the government's not doing enough for them, so they're going to become a separate country, declare a separate state.
They can't do it, but they just want to.
In the past, when the flesh dominated our lives, you were locked in virtual confusion and unstable in all your ways. How do I know? Because I was. I thought I was good. I thought I was great. Why? Because I measured myself against other people. That's the biggest mistake you can make. Do not measure yourself against somebody else. Measure yourself against his standards. That's the favourite thing with the kids. Oh, but they do it worse than I do. Don't make it right. You are unable to understand the real truth or communicate with Yahweh. That was the worst part about it, is you had no lines of communication open with the Father. You weren't tuned in. And because you weren't talking to him, you weren't hearing from him. And if you're not hearing from him, you're in big trouble. You'll go all over the place. You'll go around in circles. Remember, those who don't live and teach the absolute truth of what Yeshua has taught are neither his Talmudim nor the fathers. We just read them. If we don't actually carry out his commands, not just know them, not learn them, but carry them out, then we don't have the Father. Wouldn't that be a shock for a lot of people these days?
There are some people who think that Torah is nothing more than theory, when in fact it's more practical than anything else.
I've built a crystal cathedral. I've built a big stone. And I'm building and I've got my name on my ministry. But are you carrying out his commandments? Are you loving one another? Are you bearing the right fruit? Those who do what he says have a relationship with both the Father and the Son. There is no middle ground. You can't know one and not know the other. If you say, oh, look, I follow Yeshua, I follow Jesus. But do you follow the Father? Well, not really. Well, then you're not following either of them. It's a package deal. You get one, you get them both. But only if you carry out what they say to do. There are no grey areas. There's no confusion, because any other behaviour is destructive and not constructive and will lead people astray, which will ruin their lives and ours. We must present the truth in all of its entirety to allow it to set them free. Why? Because we and they should no longer be infants, no longer be babies, tossed around and blown all over the place by each new flaky, deceptive, trending wind of teaching, based on theories and rumours, and science and humanism. Science and humanism are based on theories, but Yahweh's kingdom is based on facts. Again, that's another major part of the message today. Science works on theories. The kingdom works on facts.
Amen.
That's why when people say they discovered them, 60, 70, 80 years later, they're still spoken of as theories. They're not facts. Yet they taught us facts. Darwinism has taught us facts. It's not. It's his theory. It's even described as his theory.
And even he repented.
And even he repented at the end and said it's a load of rubbish.
Well, the only science that is actually true is what they call natural science, which is basically
Which is
everyday.
called creation.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
I saw Dawkins on television the other day. Did you see him?
No. I know
Wow.
about him,
Yeah. Poor man.
though. He is. He's
What?
twisted and bitter and angry.
He's
And blames God for the way he is.
he's one of the senior people that they refer to over evolution. And
He's also one of the world's most brilliant mathematicians.
but I
scientist.
see he hasn't had a fulfilled life. And I was
Well, he wouldn't.
really set me thinking what each one of us could say to somebody like that. There's no blessing in his life. It's a shame. He's empty. Oh, man.
So his facts, the kingdom facts, are established by Yahweh and through Yahweh. And it's through our spirits restored and renewed by him that we willingly submit to his authority and place ourselves under his care and leadership. We do not place ourselves under the care and leadership of somebody we don't trust. And we trust based on experience. We are integral parts of his body, meticulously and precisely fitted and united together by the support of every other part and joint. And if that's not happening, the body's in trouble. And it's time for the body to start supporting each joint, to support one another. With each part, including us, needing to fulfill its specialised function and enabling healthy growth that helps build the whole structure together with unconditional love. If we're not part of a structure that's being built together with unconditional love, we're building the wrong structure. And he's the head and he directs what we do. Just because we need to relate to people as people and not put labels on them, and that's a very important thing that we need to understand, is not to label people.
Yes,
People label people because they fear the unknown.
yes, that's right.
Anything that's different, they fear it because it changes. They can't control it. If they can't control it, then they don't feel secure. People who control things and over-control things are the most insecure people in the world. Feel sorry for them. They have to control everything to make themselves feel secure. But just because of that, not putting labels on them or rejecting them personally does not mean that we also have to accept their humanistic theories and teachings and their doctrines and their religious ideologies, or ecumenism. And just because we refuse to jump on their bandwagon and join their exclusive intellectual clubs, we will not be popular. Don't expect to fit in and be accepted if we won't follow their way of thinking, their little bandwagon. If we're different, then we're outside the camp. They'll reject us. Why? Because they don't understand us and they fear us. And because they think they're right and everybody else is wrong. I don't think I'm right and everybody else is wrong. I think he's right and the rest of us need to catch up. Why won't we be popular? Because we will be different and not willing to go along with the status quo. But what we will be is obedient. I'm more interested in hearing Yahweh, Yeshua, at the end of the day saying, well done, good and faithful servant. If I hear that from him, the rest doesn't matter. And if we're obedient to him, we will be speaking the truth in unconditional love that casts out all fear.
Yes, amen.
And we'll be living it on a day-to-day basis, not just talking about it. like I've said many, many times, and I'll say it as many times as it takes, people are sick and tired of hearing about it, they want to see it. Stop talking to us about it and show us. Why does unconditional love cast out all fear? Because fear is based on real or imagined threats that affect our physical, emotional and spiritual well-being. Threats of retribution and punishment. But love, on the other hand, is all about promises, based on grace and forgiveness. It is the absolute essence of Yeshua's message and his promises to us. It was the reason he came to redeem us and reconcile us back to our Abba, to Yahweh Elohim. Otherwise, he could have just sent a few nukes and finished the job and start again. The good news is he promised not to do that again. He puts his rainbow out every once in a while just to remind us. Truths. He could have come and established a Bible college. Couldn't he? He could have built the biggest cathedral you've ever seen. But what did he come? He came to 12 people. And he lived with them and taught them and showed them. He didn't just talk to them, he showed them. And then he said, right, now you go out and do the same. And they're saying to us down the centuries, now you go out and do the same. And that's what he said to them. He said, I'm telling you now to go and teach the nations to obey everything that I've commanded you to obey. Go and make Talmud. You can't make a Talmud by teaching them. You can only make a Talmud by living with them and showing them by example.
Disciples, if you don't know what
Disciples.
means.
You make disciples by living with them and sharing with them and teaching them through your behaviour. Unconditional love casts out all fear. Why? Because fear is based on real or imagined threats that affect our physical, emotional and spiritual well-being. Threats of retribution and punishment. But love, on the other hand, is all about promises based on grace and forgiveness. It's the essence of his message. It's the reason he came to reconcile us back to our Abba, Yahweh Elohim. That's why he came to us as a human being. Would have probably recognised him if he came down with a pair of wings. Scattered fairy dust everywhere. Gold teeth in our mouths.
That's when
He came to us as a human being to experience what we experience. That's why he came. So that he couldn't just talk to us about it and say, you can do it. But he said, I'm going to come and experience everything that you experience. And still show you that by example, to teach us as human beings how to communicate with and how to relate to our Abba, our Heavenly Father. That's why he came, to restore the relationship. Not to start a new religion, not to teach us something new, but to restore our relationship with our Abba. And also with one another on a daily basis. Beloved, any other message that deviates from this principle or doesn't include this teaching is absolutely fruitless, futile, destructive, divisive, and totally unacceptable to Abba. That's how strongly I feel about it. That's how strongly he feels about it. Anything that deviates from those principles is wrong. And it will be fruitless, it will be futile, it will be destructive, it will certainly be divisive. And it's totally unacceptable to Abba. And it should be totally unacceptable to us. And to those that we are led to share with on a regular basis. If I'm not taking the truth to them, I don't want to go. Because I'm not going to do them any good, and I'm certainly not going to do me any good. So shalom aleichem, or shalom with you, Chavarim, friends. Alechem shalom, with you shalom. That's the greeting that when you meet somebody, you bless them, and when you leave them, you bless them. So Like I said, check your whips at the door. You don't need them anymore. You can throw all the hairbrush shirts and Salvation Army pin and all the other methods of torture that you give yourself and blame yourself and sit and have a pity party and worry. You're allowed $5 a day, okay? You can sit and worry for 5 minutes.